So I want to talk a little bit about my Ableton Live Worship setup and what all this stuff is and how it works and why it's all here. So the first thing that you're probably noticing is that I use arrangement view as opposed to session view. Session view has kind of become like the standard go-to option for live worship because it's really easy to use and it's really easy to get everything set up and ready to go. It just takes a lot of front end to get everything in there, and then once you get everything set up, you just have to drag and drop into the right spot. And even though this does take a little bit more time to get set up, and from week to week it takes a little bit more planning, I think that this setup is worth the extra time because it takes a lot of pressure off of whoever is running Ableton and running the various tech aspects of your set from week to week. So, why use arrangement view as opposed to session view? Session view is good for like going sequentially in order. Like if you are okay with just press and play in each song and going through your set that way, it works fine. But what arrangement view does, what I can do here is start my set at the very beginning, press play, and then it seamlessly goes through to the end of the set. And if I have it all set up right, I don't have to press stop or play again for the rest of the set, like from here to here. So the next thing I want to do is talk about all of these different tracks and what they do. So this first one is a markers track. So one of the reasons why I prefer arrangement view to session view is because in session view, if you're doing a song and you're rehearsing it and you need to do part of the song again but not the whole song, that is incredibly difficult, if even possible, to get it all set up. Like it's like Glorious Day. Let's say we're practicing the song and we didn't get the timing right on the bridge, and we need to do that part again, but we got the rest of the song down really well. All you have to do, whoever is running Ableton, just has to open up the marker set, zoom into the right spot, and find where you're looking for, and you're good to go.
2, 3, 4.
And you're off. And it's really easy. So these are just MIDI clips. Like this is a MIDI track, and these are MIDI clips that I've added, but I haven't added any MIDI notes or anything like that in there. So pretty much all I do is I title the clip and just use it as a blank text box. And it's really easy. Just add the clip like you would add any other MIDI clip, and then you title it, and you're good to go. The next clip is my tempo clip. This one is a little harder to explain because I don't exactly know how I made this work. But here's the purpose for it. Session view sees this whole thing from measure 1 to measure 800, whatever that is. It sees it all as one song. And therefore it gives the whole thing one tempo, unless it is specifically told to give it another tempo. So I'm going to go here. You see the MIDI or the tempo clip starts here. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and press play, and you can see the automatic tempo is 110. But my other songs are 75 and 72 beats per minute. And so unless I specifically tell Ableton to go from 110 to 75, it's not going to. And I'm going to be playing Yes I Will and Living Hope at 110 beats per minute. So these clips are just blank audio clips. I pressed record, recorded for one measure, and didn't record any sound. So it's just a blank audio recording. And then I warped it, right? So I set warp on, and I set the segment BPM to the BPM of the song. So for Glorious Day, I set it to 100 beats per minute, 110 beats per minute. The next thing is I set it as the tempo leader. This option here, follower or leader, I set it as the leader. And the tempo leader will override the automatic session tempo. It's effectively the same thing as setting the tempo for the track here in the master column in session view. It's kind of the same concept. And then you want to loop it, right? So you have to loop it, make sure it's a length of one measure, and then you just loop the track through the length of the song. And then for the length of your song, this clip, every measure is repeatedly telling Ableton over and over and over again, the tempo is 110 beats per minute, the tempo is 110 beats per minute, throughout the length of the song. And then it's constantly telling Ableton the tempo is 75 beats per minute, over and over and over again. And that keeps Ableton from adjusting the tempo to its go-to default setting, which is whatever. The next track is my playback. So this is just the MP3 of the recorded song. And I have this here because as I'm building all of this other stuff, I want to listen to the MP3 to make sure everything is in the right spot. We typically do things exactly as they're recorded at Red Hill. Sometimes there's a little variation, and if that's the case, I'll just do some editing and some copying and pasting to put stuff in the right spot. But I have this MP3 track here so that I can build everything in the right spot. Now, on that note of building these things, you can see here that like my tracks are laid out in a specific order. Even if you open up the backing tracks group, they're laid out in a specific order. And that is completely intentional. If I go here to my other projects, I have projects like an individual Ableton project for every song that we do. And each of these projects, if I were to open this project for Build My Life, you would see this exact same layout in that project. And so because of that, whenever I want to use Build My Life in a worship set, I can just drag and drop it in, and all of the tracks for Build My Life are already in the correct order for this set. Alright, so I don't have to move anything around, I don't have to readjust or anything like that. Even the colors of the tracks are the same. And I'll demonstrate that here in a second, how I drag and drop things in. So the playback, I obviously don't want the playback happening during rehearsal or during worship, and so I'll just turn it off. But occasionally during worship, this has only happened like once or twice, but occasionally during worship, if someone comes in unprepared or it's just a really difficult song, we'll want to listen to the song and play along with the recording. So for that reason, I have the playback routed to the same output as the click track. Now we use we have a whole rack set up for Ableton. We use a Focusrite Scarlett 18i20 to route each of these tracks to an individual input on our console. So like if I had it plugged into the Scarlett, which I don't have it here in my house with me, but if I had it in the right spot, I'd just be able to route them all. Like we have a track in the Scarlett, or an input in the Scarlett, it's like 7, like track 7, that is for the click track. And I'll route the playback and the click to the same spot. And the cue goes to the cue track, and the backing tracks all have individual inputs as well. The reason for that is that our sound tech really likes to mix the backing tracks himself. And he likes to, we want to be able to have the ability to mix the cue and the click separately in the Avioms. So cue and click go to 2 different inputs in the Avioms, and that just gives us more freedom to mix it how we want it to be. So that's the playback. Next is the click and the cue. I do this the exact same way you do. I keep them as MIDI clips, and I will set them up in the individual song projects like I was telling you. That's pretty standard. Pretty straightforward. And then backing tracks, I group them all together, and I just import audio tracks that I either have from bought multi-tracks or from personal recordings that I've made. So that stuff, if you're familiar with Ableton at all, is pretty old news for you. The next thing I want to talk about are these locators that I have here. These locators are essential to using this setup and this arrangement view orientation. So each of these locators are titled with the spot in the order of worship that they begin, and the key that triggers them. Right. So if I go to this button here, you can key map a key on the keyboard of your computer to activate each one of these locators, and I just have them in order. You'll see like the ones that begin songs are labeled with letters Q, W, E, R, and the ones that begin transition points in the service are labeled with numbers. Some of them have a title, some of them don't, but each one of them is activated by pressing the corresponding button. So 1, Q, 2, W, E, 3, and 4. It's really simple, really straightforward, and that gives me control over whoever's running Ableton has control over emergency stops if we get off track with the click and we need to bail out, or like let's say that during this space between these songs I'm talking and I talk for a really long time and I decide I'm going to read the whole book of Romans or something, and we get to this point and like I'm still talking and I'm running out of time, whoever's running Ableton can just press 2 and it cycles back. And now, like, let's say I'm done talking. Like, he just cycled back and now I'm done talking. He can press W and we're ready to go with the next song. So that's what the locators do, and they're really important. The next thing I want to talk about is how to import a song. So, like, these are my 3 songs in our first worship set, and then I want to add like a response song. So we're going to go with we're going to do Jesus is Better as a response song. So I just go to my song projects here. I open up Jesus is Better project, and then the ALS file I will drag and drop into my Ableton session. Now you can see you can see that this song did not copy and paste itself into the existing tracks. Instead, it made new tracks, even though it's an exact clone of the stuff up there. And it also politely inserted itself at measure 1. So what I want to do is I just want to highlight the whole thing, and I'm going to move it up to where it's supposed to be, and I'm going to position it like right about here. Alright, so there's Jesus is Better. And then I'm going to delete these tracks, these extras. And then I'm going to add a locator for Jesus is Better. So this one was letter E, so I'm going to add a locator right here for Jesus is Better. Title it R, Jesus is Better. And then I'm going to key map a capital R to it. Remember, they're case sensitive. And then that's my second set. So the next thing I want to do is think about like spacing between songs in the set. Where do I need some space to be able to speak or read or do something like that? And where do I just want to go right from one song into the other without taking any break or any rest? And I have that set up already in here. And I'll walk you through each of these things. So first we have a call to worship. So when we start the set, it'll start in measure 1. And I'll be giving a call to worship. It'll probably be much shorter than that. Usually I just say, hey Red Hill, glad to see you all today. Let's stand and worship together. So I'm actually going to press Command-Shift-Delete, and I'm going to delete time there. That's what that command is. Command-Shift-Delete. So we start measure 1, and the pad is coming up. So we do a 5-minute countdown before service starts, and whenever we get to like the 3-second mark, we'll start 3, 2, 1, service starts. Hey Red Hill, I'm glad to see you all today. Let's stand and worship together. We're going to sing the song Glorious Day about how Jesus has called us from death to life. Song's going.
Intro 2.
And then I'll show you how I add a pad as well in just a second, because there's kind of an art to it. But that's how the call to worship works. And so then we get to the end of Glorious Day, right? We get done with the song. And now I want to say something between Glorious Day and Yes I Will. I want to say, like, church, I want to remind you that whatever kind of week you've had, whatever's on your heart, whatever's on your shoulders, Jesus welcomes you today. He invites us to worship Him and to love Him and to cherish and treasure Him above all else, even when life is difficult. And so as we sing this next song, like, even if you don't believe it 100% right now, like, let's declare to ourselves and to the world that we will love and cherish and praise Jesus even in the most difficult days. And then we go into Yes I Will. And there is some transition time right there. But then I don't want to say anything between Yes I Will and Living Hope. So we finish the song. So we finish the song. There's a couple seconds of space.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
and we're going. So, like these things are put there on purpose, and then one I neglected was at the end of the last song here, this space from the end of the song to this 4 marker is for prayer as we transition out of the worship set and into the sermon. So I have this space here just to accomplish that goal, and so whenever we get to the 4 marker, we'll stop everything entirely, right? So like we finish the first song, and then this spot here is going to be prayer, and then when we get to 4, whoever's running Ableton is going to stop and press the master stop, because from here to here this is sermon space, and so we want to, like, obviously you can't have a 30-second sermon right in there, and so we're gonna stop everything there, and then when we come back up for the response song, press R and Jesus is better, and we'll start from there. So I'm actually going to label this 4 and sermon. So the next thing I want to do is add pads to make these transitions smoother. So I'm going to open up a Finder window, and I'm going to go down to my worship pads here. So the first song, Glorious Day, is in D, so I'm going to pull in a pad that's in the key of D. I'm going to open up my backing tracks to make sure that I have everything in the right spot. So I'm going to go find a pad in D. I'm going to drag and drop right here at the very beginning of the set. Right? So right at the very beginning of the set, there's a pad that'll come up, and then I'm going to cut the time of this pad down to like right in here at the beginning of Yes I Will. And Yes I Will is in C. So I'm going to drop a pad, that's the wrong file, I'm going to drop a pad in here. And then I don't want the natural fade in that pad, and I'll explain why in a second. So I'm going to cut it down to where the pad's already at full force. I'm going to cut the time on the end of it as well. So obviously this won't work going straight from B to C. It's going to sound atrocious. Yeah, don't want that. So I'm going to crossfade these pads. If you look at the tracks here, you see that even though Yes I Will technically starts here, there's 2 measures of click and count in where you're not going to actually hear the song. And so I'm going to put my crossfade in there. So 2 measures, and then I'll give it a little bit of grace right there. So by the time that Yes I Will is actually started, we will have had a nice, gentle, lush crossfade from D to C. So let's go ahead and test that out. So we finish Glorious Day, and I'm offering some type of word of encouragement or liturgy. I'm actually going to move the locator back here before the crossfade starts. And then our crossfade's going strong. I want it to be a little bit longer, actually. I don't like that. So I'm going to move it back here. And then actually, it's too long. I'm going to make it shorter. I'm going to make it right about there.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
And you can make the crossfade as long or as short as you like. That's just guesswork on my part right then. So the reason why I have this locator here before the crossfade is so that, like, if I'm talking here and I just go crazy and I've been talking for this long, I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to go back to 2. But if we're already in the middle of a crossfade, right, like if the crossfade's already happening and then we loop back, it's going to sound wonky. So like at this point, we're transitioning, and now we're not. So I like to have the locator, in case I have to cycle back, I want it to just be natural D-pad, not like the modulation between D and C. So that's why I like to have the locators before the crossfades start, even if it's just before they start. Now I'm going to do the same thing with Living Hope. Living Hope is an E flat, so I'm going to find an E flat pad or D sharp, whichever. If you're a weirdo, D sharp works too. And then I'm going to drag and drop that in here. It's going to take a second because I've never used this pad in a set before. And it's an 8-minute long pad. So I'm going to shrink that down really quick. Alright, so now we've got kind of the same thing here. I want to get rid of the natural fade, and I want to butt them up right against one another. And then I'm going to start the crossfade right here so that we can transition nicely into Living Hope. I'm going to make it a little bit shorter there. So like we get done with Yes I Will.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, so that sounded really nice, and it worked really well. So now with the prayer here, with this space between the sermon, I'm going to draw this out. I'm going to set the fade to start like back here. We want a really long gradual fade here. So let's say we finish Living Hope. And so I'm going to start praying at this point. You know what? I'm actually going to draw this out a little bit longer. I'm going to make this stop right up against Jesus is better. So like at this point we finished Living Hope and we're going strong and I'm praying. I'm going to move this locator back, and so we're praying and transitioning, and then it's the same thing here. If I get to this point, I'm almost out of time. Press 3 and we're back. And now I'm praying again, but I'm done. Amen. Press 4. We have a nice gentle fade out. Then whoever's running Ableton will want to stop right there. Right? Like between this point, when like during this space, they want to stop. Like hit the master stop. And then we're done with the first set, and that's it. So now what we're going to do is get ready for the second set. So I'm going to, Jesus is Better is in C, so I'm going to pull up a C pad right here. This one we can leave the natural fade because there's no need for a crossfade, because we've, like, between these two songs we've stopped for a while. I'm actually gonna put the sermon right here. I'm gonna put 4. There we go. So that should work that out. So if I have to cycle back, like we start at 3, and I have to cycle back, we get to 4. I can do that. And then, so we jump ahead to 4. And that way, there's like a little bit of time between Jesus is Better and the end of that pad, so that they don't have to try to stop it instantly before this pad starts. So now we're up for the response song. Whoever's running Ableton will just press R, and then press the master play button.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
And we're good to go. So that's how all that works. I want to really quick just go through the set from beginning to end. Not listening to the whole thing, I'll skip through the songs, but just kind of show you like how the flow of thing works, and try to do a little bit of acting, pretending like this is a real thing. So we're here at the beginning. We start. We have our 5-minute countdown. We're at 4 seconds right now. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Hey everybody, welcome to Red Hill. We're glad to see you today. Would you stand and worship with us as we sing about how Jesus has given us new life? Let's stand and do this together.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
Alright, so now we're done with Glorious Day. We got this space here, and I want to say we want to remember that when we come together to worship, we bring in a variety of experiences. Some of us have had great weeks, others have had horrible weeks, but one thing that I want to urge you to remember is that Jesus is constant in the midst of our sorrow and in the midst of our triumph. And so even if at this point you are feeling completely beaten up by the world, let's sing to Jesus and declare to ourselves and to Him that He is our greatest treasure. Let me start Yes, I Will.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
And then we're done with Yes, I Will.
3, 4.
And we're going to fade into Living Hope.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
And then we're done with Living Hope. So get to this point.
Verse.
And we're done with the song. And so now that we're done with the song, I'm going to pray as Raiden gets ready to come up and preach, and as the band starts unplugging the in-ear monitors and stuff like that. I'm going to pray and ask that God would teach us from His Word, and that He would change and transform us and conform us to the image of Jesus. And as all of that is happening, this pad is going in the background, but now I'm still praying, and it's like we're almost out of time, and so my Ableton guy is going to press 3. And we're back here with some more pad time purchased for us for just a little bit longer, but now I'm done praying and there's a lot of time left. So he's going to press 4 and it's going to fade out. Now whoever's running Ableton will kill the set. We go down for the sermon and take a seat. Now the sermon's over, we come back up for a response, and once we're ready for a response and get everything ready to go, whoever's running Ableton will press R. That moves the playback to the beginning of the response set. Then we start the master playback.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
And then we go through Jesus is Better, and we're good to go, and we're done. We get done with this last song.
4.
We get done with the song. I'm going to draw the pad out just a little bit. I'm going to get a nice fade. And whoever's doing the end of service announcements is coming up on stage right now to do that, and we can stop the set. Yeah, so that's kind of how it all works and flows, and I think it goes really well. Like most of the time, when I say the goal here is to press start at the beginning of the set and press stop at the end of the set, and you don't have to do much else. Like that's how it goes 90% of the time. We're at the point now where me as a planner, I can kind of anticipate the amount of space I need between songs, and I mean we have a pretty straightforward service. We don't really have any choir. We don't show a lot of videos, and if we do, it's before the music starts. So like this works really, really well for us, and most of the time it goes exactly as planned. Really the only thing is if we are having a rough week as a band and we get thrown off the click track. And if that's the case, like if we're playing Glorious Day, right, we get thrown off the click track and you have to stop. Whoever's running Ableton just has to press 2 and pause it. And that's going to kill your pad instantly, and that might sound bad, but honestly, pads aren't usually at the forefront of the sound anyway. And so that's the worst that could happen. And once you kill it, you just press W and start with Yes, I Will whenever you're ready to do that. Or if you want to speak, like if you kill the song here, right, so you got off the track, you just press 2 again. And now you can start with whatever you were wanting to say after Yes, I Will with the pad still going. Yeah, it's really flexible, works really well, and I haven't had a whole lot of issues with it. So yeah, that's how I use Ableton. That's how it goes during worship, and I think it works really well.